So, I'm guessing we're all here because we have brilliant ideas, and now we're ready for people to start pouring in the millions of dollars that we need to make them a reality. And we know that we're going to now become completely grant-supported institutions, and that will be completely sustainable for the rest of our lives. So let's talk about grant funding. I have the credentials. I am, in fact, an academic whore. I have gone out and sold my soul, at least, for getting grants from different institutions. And so what I want to sort of talk to you about is from three perspectives. The first is as someone trying to get the grant, and in fact, that's what a lot of the slides are about. The second one is being on the other side as a grant reviewer, what I look for and the things I pay attention to and what I've seen others do. And then the third is as sort of an administrator where grants are going on and the realities of some of that. So what I thought we'd do with our hour here is that these are a set of slides. I've edited them some, but really Eileen Allen and Christina Lee Dietz at Syracuse University, who are grants administrators at the university, put these together. And they kindly shared them with me, and I, like I said, did some editing of them. But to walk through that. But then I thought we could tell some stories throughout. Has anyone here written a grant? Has anyone successfully written a grant? Very cool. So you guys can share your experiences as well. I think that will be very helpful. All right. To me, the first and most important thing in writing a grant proposal is to understand why you are writing a grant proposal. Why do you want to apply for a grant? What is it that you need? And most people look at grants and they think, oh, I need money. I need the resources. But you have to understand that one of the things you're going to experience is as you start doing grant work, you will find that it comes with its own peculiar set of constraints, its own peculiar set of challenges, and not the least of which is cultural. I was working with a relatively large company, well, I guess medium-sized business, about 300 employees. They said, we want to get in the grants business. We want to go get some grants for doing software development that'll help us do our software development. And the first thing I said to them is, you realize if you've never done this before, it actually can change the culture. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, imagine if you start getting these grants. And a lot of the grants you're going to be looking for are things that are new. It's really hard, I'll just be brutally honest, it's really hard to get grant money for something that you are already doing or have done in the past. There is just a huge bias towards novelty and new in grant funding. Not a lot of people like to say, you're doing a great job, here's some money for doing a great job, because you're doing a great job. So there's going to be this idea that you always have to have a new spin to it. It also creates an interesting sort of new taskmaster. Some of you have been in the experience where you've had multiple bosses before. Well, prepare to add another one to it. I mean, you'll notice that when Ann Craig has got up and talked about IMLS here, she does a big job of talking about IMLS and talking about what they need and talking about all these other things. And IMLS as a federal agency is not always nicely lined up with state priorities. And so you have to deal with that as well. One of the other things I've seen in organizations is if you get really good at getting grants, you end up doing the new stuff, and there are people that then have to do the old stuff. And you might have already experienced some of that with I Lead You. You're going to Springfield for 3 days, I get to manage the reference desk. Oh, good joy. Right? So that's going to be a reality within it. You write equipment in, suddenly you have the new equipment and someone else doesn't. I just want to say that this isn't a panacea to all things. You do have to be aware that there are implications. The other really important thing that I'm going to say over and over and over again, which is if you cannot answer this question, why should the sponsor, the person with the money that funds the resources, fund your project? You will not get the money. So I used to be on the new faculty bandwagon. And so what had happened is they would hire a new faculty member, they would say, Dave, take them to lunch and teach them how to get money. And invariably, the problem that they all had was they had great questions that they wanted to answer. And it was impossible for them to phrase it in a way that someone else gave a damn whether they found the answer or not. Right? If you say, I really want to do what do I care what you really want to do? What's that going to do for me? I mean, it sounds sort of rather brutal, but that's what it comes down to. What's in it for the person who's going to fund it? Is it prestige? Is it accomplishing their strategic goals? Is it helping you out because you have a personal relationship? What is it that's in it for them? If you can't answer that question, you will not, well, let me rephrase it. You will be lucky to get a grant. It will almost happen in spite of yourself. So, what is a grant application? Now, a lot of people say, it's a grant application. It's what I type in and I send in and they give me money. But I'll tell you that if you look at it as a sort of one-off deal where you're writing an application for a sponsor, you're going to do a lot more work than you need to, and you're going to get a lot less leverage than you should get. It's all about leverage, right? It's all about how do you do some work that can turn into additional opportunities, additional resources. Before you came in, it's like, I wrote it, I don't think I'm going to get it. All right, how can you make sure that even if you don't get it, you've gotten something useful out of it that you can use for something else? In some organizations, simply having pursued funding is what you needed to show that you were thinking out of the box. But the actual document you wrote can be used in many different circumstances. A marketing tool, right? When someone reads this, what you're doing is you're taking an idea and you're selling it. It is a persuasive document. And that sales job is obviously to a funder, but it might be to your boss, it might be to other institutional partners, it might be to your community. So can you take it and rework it in such a way that, you said you really wanted to do this within your community, you didn't get the grant, can you then use it to say to the community, we really should do this still? Can it turn into a publication? Can it turn into a newsletter article? What can we use it for? Ultimately, the story you're going to look for is an application for investment. There are very, very few people that want to simply give you money and walk away. I know of one grant proposal, it's not even a grant proposal. The only thing that I know that's even close to that is the MacArthur Genius Grants, where they say, you're smart, here's $500,000, enjoy that. That's it. Now, I haven't gotten mine yet, and I don't think I'm holding out for it, so really most of this is, you're going to make an argument to someone with funds or resources that you are going to have them make an investment. That investment, just like if you're putting money into the stock market, you want to find the lowest risk possible. This is a really bizarre sort of tap dance that you're going to do in the narrative. The tap dance is, on one hand, you want to say, it's new and exciting and cool, but on the other hand, you want to say, and we're sure we can do it. It's like, we want to explore whole new areas of science that we've never thought about before, and we're 100% sure that we will find the answers that will cure cancer. Right? It doesn't work that well. But you're going to try and make an argument where low risk, high yield. How do you work on low risk? We can talk about all this. One of the big ways that libraries can do it is partnership, partnership, partnership. In other words, if you give this to me, I'm working with the schools and the state and the county, and in other words, there are lots of players here that are going to be invested to make this happen. The more they can see people who've already bought into the idea, the lower risk they're going to sense it is for themselves. And by the way, my bottom line with any project, when you get them, under-promise and over-deliver. If you already have the research, if you already have the project, if you already have the thing 90% done, sell it as if it's brand new, then you're guaranteed that at least you'll have 90% of the deliverables by the time you even get it. Now, don't say that out loud, and since we're recording this, now everyone hears it. But because ultimately what you want to do is get a grant, and use that grant to get the next grant, and use that grant to get the next grant, and you're building a reputation as someone who under-promises and over-delivers. And trust me, only the over-deliver part sticks within their head. Reflect on why you are worthy of investment, right? Communicate clearly, concisely, and according to the sponsor's guidelines. We'll come back more to this detail. This is, I swear to God, third grade all over again, right? You will be given guidelines. Follow them. It's amazing to me, and putting my other hat as a reviewer, where you'll get a 10-page narrative. You're allowed to have a 10-page narrative, and a 30-page document comes in. Now, I'd be surprised in certain circles, like I would actually never see the 30 pages. It just would be rejected out of hand before it ever gets to review. So it's like, why did you spend that much time on something to stop you that's so simple? Things like if you go to the National Science Foundation, and by the way, there are plenty of opportunities for libraries at the National Science Foundation. Margins matter. Spacing matters. Font size matters. It's details. You have necessary tools. What you're going to do when you're talking about your project is to say, we're not starting from scratch. Right? If we say we're going to build a website, we've built websites before. If we say that we're going to do a youth program before, we're going to demonstrate that we have connections with youth. We have that expertise on staff. There are a couple different ways you can do it. Resumes are great. Finding names are great. Once again, partners are great. How will the funder benefit from the investment? That's the big one. What's in it for them? Okay. Now, rarely will they ever say what's in it for them is fame and glory. Because most of the people giving out grants are either federal agencies which are not out for glory, or they're foundations which have a philanthropic or altruistic purpose. I've done work with the MacArthur Foundation. And we always try to put the MacArthur Foundation wherever we can in big letters, and they're constantly like, no, no, it's all about you, it's all about you. Which is bizarre. But, in fact, the federal government's the one that wants the big logo. All right. When you're reviewing a grant application, you need to find out, is it a good fit? Your idea, your need, your project is well aligned to the funder's interests. Prepare a concept paper. I call these one-pagers. Whenever a student, professional, fellow faculty member comes together and says, this idea, it's a great idea. Write it to me in one page. If you can't write it in one page, you can't do it. You're not ready. Right? If you can't write it clearly in one page, you're not ready to do it. And you will be surprised how hard it is to write one page versus 20 pages. One page is important. One page is all you get. Right? Take that one pager, take that concept paper, and really, if it's 50 pages, no one's going to read it. Trust me, I wrote a book that's 5 pounds. You all have it. Right? Contact a program manager early. Now this is another one where you'll find that different funding sources have different length of relationships they like. But all of them are looking for input. So for example, if you go to a federal contract, the difference between a grant and a contract. They're both legal documents, but a contract is one that has really specified details for deliverables. And they take you to court if you don't do it. A grant is really saying this is what we're trying to accomplish, and as long as you attempt it in good faith, you'll be fine. Right? Very different worlds. Contracts, people, particularly federal government, state government, don't want to talk to you. They want to be as neutral as possible. On grants, they're usually looking for a relationship. So what you will find is that, I'll just pick on IMLS, Institute for Museum and Library Services, federal agency, granting authority. You can go directly to them for small and large grants. We can look at those. Then you can call and talk to them. Say, hey, I got this idea. What do you think? And you can be real clear because most of the grant agencies have some sort of review panel between them. So the project manager can't actually sort of influence it too much. Has anyone ever played blackjack at a casino? I liked blackjack, but I was always scared as hell to sit at the tables because I was like, I can't add that fast in my head. And you know, all the other people were pissed off at me. And a friend finally took to me and he sat me down and says, you don't get it. The person dealing will help you because they have no discretion whatsoever. Right? If it's under 17, they get hit. If it's over 17, they stand. That's it. That's all they can do. And so they're perfectly willing to go, well, you know, you might want to split on that. Hey, did you think about it? And they'll just help you through the whole process. Same thing with many grant administrators. If there's a review process, they can't get in and influence the review, so they're always willing to help you and talk about, those have been funded in the past, that's a good idea. Have you thought about this? Hey, we have these national priorities. And getting to know these program managers is really important. At some agencies, particularly foundations, it's very weird. They will help you write your proposal. In fact, the proposal is just about the last part that you should do. If you look at writing a grant proposal as your first step, you're in what we call the 20% zone. 20% of blind peer-reviewed proposals get funded, and that's good. right? You want to get in the 80, 90%. And the only way that works is if you know, and they basically look at you and go, you know, Anthony, I really want a proposal from you, and it should look kind of like this, right? That's a good day. And that means you build this relationship. So IMLS, as an example, will talk to you. Now, they have a peer review process, which they do not mess with at all. But they will help you and say, they tend to like this stuff. Hey, have you thought about this? Where's your evaluation? So talk to the people who are giving out the money early. Don't wait till it's done. Check the website for contact preferences. Some people like email, some people like phone calls, some people won't get near you. But most of the time, there's people out there. Look for annual meetings that they might have where they attend. IMLS has web walks. Did you go? Cold call or email. In other words, if you can't find any of that, just call them up and say, hey, I'm in Skokie, I got this great idea, what do you think? So, given that preference, questions at this point, by the way, I'm sorry. I say this is going to be a discussion, then I just keep rambling on. So please, at any point when you go, oh, what, give me an example, or hey, I tried, it worked. All right? All right. So let's get started. Tell your boss. Tell your boss. Just please tell your boss. And don't tell your boss, hey, look, the computers are on the way. It doesn't work, though. It's not. Understand the mission of the sponsor of the program solicitation. Read the damn instructions, please. Understand the review process, and then make it out. This is your first step, right? After you've got that one-pager, after you say, I have an idea, I think I know where to go with it. That previous step about the one-pagers, before you even have identified where you're going to even apply it, then you go and say, I'm going to talk to IMLS. And the person, Kevin Cherry, is in charge of the Laura Bush stuff. And I'm going to do a PhD proposal. I'm going to call up Kevin. I'm going to say, I got this great idea. We're going to take PhD students. We're going to abandon them on an island, and we're going to make them fight it out to see who graduates. That's my curricular plan. Let's go. And if he, for some reason, doesn't laugh and hang up, at some point you can say, hey, you know, I put together a one-pager. Can I send it to you? And that's a way of starting that feedback. Okay? But now we know it. Now we sort of got the okay. So we're going to look at the solicitation for Laura Bush. We're going to read the instructions, understand the review process, and make it out. So let's do it. You can follow along at home if you want. So I'm going to pick on IMLS for a moment, but we can do others. We'll bring up a nice little web browser, hopefully. So we're going to go to imls.gov. That's probably not right. .gov. And so this is IMLS, Institute of Museum Library Services, probably one of the largest funding agencies in libraries today. Federal agency. ILEU is an IMLS grant, for example. Also, if you have, has anyone looked at LSTA money? Something from the Library Service Technology Act. Sometimes the state library will ask for proposals. That's actually administered through IMLS as well. The money comes from the government to the states, and the states then give you that. All right, and you'll see over here, find available grants. And you can look by grant name, by institution, by project type. Let's see what it says under institution. So, we can look for libraries. And you'll see here, there's the American Heritage Preservation Grant. Let me make this a little bit bigger, easier to read. National Arts and Humanities Youth Program Awards, Connecting Collections, Laura Bush 21st Century Librarian, National Medal for Museum and Library Service, National Leadership Grants, Sparks Ignition Grants, and Learning Labs in Libraries. I want to point out a few of these just for fun. Laura Bush is actually what ILEU. So if you're going to do staff development, education, let's say you wanted to partner with a library school and send your folks to get their degrees or something like that, Laura Bush. National Leadership Grants are discretionary grant programs where IMLS looks to fund new stuff, cutting edge, research services, whatever. So if you feel that you have an idea that can be replicated or become a pilot nationwide, excellent source. Sparks Ignition Grants, really great if you've got a small prototype idea. They're about 10K. In fact, I think when Mary Shute was here, the last one, they pulled aside some library school. This would be a good one, right? That's, by the way, a good sign, right? So look at those. And then learning labs in libraries and museums is kind of interesting. The MacArthur Foundation funded the, was it youth space at Chicago Public Library? UMedia. And they said, that's such a cool thing, let's do it all over the place. And since MacArthur didn't quite feel they had the capacity to do it that big of a scale, they sort of took their money to IMLS and said, IMLS, you guys manage it, we'll fund it. And they've done a couple of these. So let's pick one. Let's pick the Sparks. I've never looked at the Sparks one, so I'll sort of walk you through what I would do. All right, guidelines for the current fiscal year, made available 90 days, etc. So the first thing we want to know is, when's our deadline? February 1st, 2012. Yes, we're still in. How much? I can get up to 25 grand. Okay, so already if you're looking to build a statewide initiative where you're putting laser shows and rocket cats in every library, probably not your right spot. But if you're looking for, got a great idea, sponsor an idea, a lot of the stuff you're working on now, that works. Grant period, up to 1 year. Now, this is another thing for you to think about culturally. If this is your baby, if this is the project you want to own for the rest of your life, can you get it done in 1 year? And what are you going to do after the year? Because Sparks don't start again. Here's your program contact. They put it right up here. So what I would do is put that one page together, and I would call them. You can email them. Email's fine. But frankly, I found a lot of these, if you get them on the phone and you're talking to them, it's just a lot faster to fill them out. But you've got others as well. Others you can talk to, so plenty of people. All right, here's the overview. The Ignition Grants for Libraries and Museums initiative is funding opportunities developed by MLS to expand and test the boundaries of libraries and archivals and practices. So already you know they're looking for innovation, right? So if you're looking to do the same thing you've been doing for 20 years, probably not your right place. Provide small target investments for high-risk, innovative responses to the challenges and opportunities facing cultural heritage institutions. So remember when I talked about low risk, high yield? It still plays, by the way. In other words, what you want to say is, this is a cool, cutting edge idea, but you still want to get the sense that you're the ones who make that happen. So you're not necessarily saying the idea is not risky, but you're trying to say the team is not risky. All right? More productively, these grants will support testing of specific innovations, foster broad sharing of information, because innovations can emerge in a variety of settings, is structured to encourage participation by organizations of all types and sizes. That's good. Partnerships are permitted but not required. May be used for, and then you get a list. Now this is where you probably want to do some research into the funding agency. We're going to get into that in a second. Now this is a big one. Eligibility. Libraries that fulfill the general criteria for libraries. You click, you find out, you probably do. May apply. Museums, public or private non-profit agencies or associations that engage in activities designed to advance these folks may apply. In addition, institutions of higher education are eligible. So what they're saying here is commercial companies are not welcome. So you can then go in, so already you're saying this might be interesting. You probably want to then go into the program guidelines and you'll suddenly see a lot of what we just said, but then you're going to find a lot of other junk. And I say junk in that you're probably not going to spend too much time in it, but it's going to get you at some point. Like about IMLS, Vine, yes. This is important stuff because it's all about the funding agency and wanting to know what it is. They're going to do web conferencing so you get some information. Here's the eligibility. And somewhere here you're finally going to get to review process. Who's going to look at it? How are they going to look at it? How to serve as a reviewer, which is always useful. If you guys want to seriously get in the grant world, call them up and say, I want to be a reviewer, and see the other side of this. It's well worth the investment. And then here's the awarding. Yeah.
If you're a reviewer for IMLS,
yes,
does that preclude you from applying?
What you can do, IMLS in particular, but most funding agencies I've seen do this. Let's say that you actually applied for Sparks and they asked you to be a reviewer for Sparks. First of all, let them know. By the way, I'm going to put this in. What they will probably tell you, but they're the lead, and that's happened before, is what happens is they discuss them individually. When yours comes up, you walk out of the room. All right? Usually what they do is they'll make sure sometimes they have multiple panels, and they'll just make sure you're not on the panel with your own. Also, they'll ask you to do that for any conflict. So for example, I'm at Syracuse University. So I may not have put in a proposal, but my colleague put in a proposal. And so I'll usually exempt myself, take myself out of the conversation for that proposal out of conflict of interest. So that's something where they can give you the guidance. By the way, IMLS has panels. MacArthur doesn't have panels. Many community granting organizations don't have panels. So this is sort of unique for larger agencies. Does that all right. So now we've got our, we're getting started. We've got our proposal. What's next? Read the instructions. Again, that big long panel, read them. Look at that outline you put together and begin to clarify any questions. How do you do that? Well, you're going to be writing it, and suddenly you're going to run into, well, wait, they said no for-profits. But one of my partners is the local car dealership, or it's Cersei Dynex, or it's whatever. Now, they're not getting money, but they're on the grant. Is that invalidated? Call your program officer. Call them up and say, hey, does this work or not? Any resources needed? Begin talking about what else you're going to need to put this grant together. Can you do this on your own? And then if you get it, are you going to need space? Are you going to need equipment? The trend is a lot of funding agencies don't want to buy computers anymore. It used to be that you would go after this funding because you'd buy a bunch of computers for the project would end, and then you have a bunch of computers you could use throughout your library. Now you're getting some pushback with people saying, come on, you can't do your business without a computer. Why are you expecting me to buy it? And so you're seeing that that's being closed off. All right. Preparation time. Is this going to be a solicited or unsolicited proposal? Know your agency, right? So solicited means they put out a call for proposals. Unsolicited means it's a great idea and I'm just calling you out of the blue to see if you'll take it. Some agencies, MacArthur, National Science Foundation, these folks will take unsolicited. Some, IMLS, will never look at unsolicited. What's the sponsor's mission? Back to that, what's in it for them? Is it, so, you know, what's it MacArthur's, a just, verdant, and equitable world or something? Use these terms a lot, right? Sponsors historical and current interest. Did these things change over time? For example, if you apply to IMLS, it would be a good idea for you to reference somewhere in there 21st century skills. It almost has no bearing on what you're applying for, but that's their current thing. They love this 21st century skills. I was on the panel that put, that report together, and I still don't know what 21st century skills are, but trust me, every proposal somewhere mentions it will help 21st century skills. So look around, see what they've done before. Get to work. Develop a timeline from the deadline. If it's due February 2nd, and it's now, let's face it, just about November, what are you going to have to do to put this thing in place? Estimate the time it's going to take for you to write it and then triple it, because it will. What will screw you up is you will have people that you have to work with. They will invariably screw it up, right? So it just takes time. The worst part is, unless you're the financial officer of your library, the financial officer of your library's job is to make sure that you don't put that institution at risk, right? So in Syracuse, we have something called the Office of Sponsored Programs, OSP, or what we like to talk about as the Office of Science Prevention. Right? They look at every proposal in depth and read those reviews and go through it and make sure there's nothing in there that could actually be interesting or fancy that they might actually get screwed over on, right? And it adds a week to 5 weeks to the process, depending on how big it is. Right? Block time, however, every day. Check in with those partners. So you're going to write it. Follow instructions for organization of narrative and the complete proposal. So here's what you'll also find out, is that proposals almost always consist of 2 parts. The first part is called the narrative. It's the part you want to write. It's the fun. It's the, hey, I want to do this. The second part is called the business proposal. It's the details. It's the budget. It's the compliance forms. It's the who's going to the check be written out to, prove that you're a nonprofit corporation, all this stuff. I look at those, my eyes go crossed, and I walk away. Right? What I do is I rough up a budget and I hand it to someone who's very smart to say, can you fill out the details? Now, that sounds well and good, but if you're an institution, I mean, Syracuse University is built to write grants. If you're an institution that's not built to write grants, you're going to be handing that over to someone who's probably never seen that before. you're going to need to work through it. We had a situation, we were applying for a $5 million contract. I was all ready to go. They then ran across all these details on computer security requirements from the federal government. Do you audit your systems on an everyday basis? Do you have X compliance and ISO standards and all this other stuff? And my university looked at this and said, we have no idea what to do. Now, that would have been really great if they had called me and said, we have no idea what to do. Instead, they decided to wait for 2 days before the proposal when I called them and said, is it done yet? And they said, oh, well, about 2 weeks ago when we looked at it, we didn't know what those were, so we ignored them. So you have to be on top of these things. The other sort of rule of thumb is creative ideas, not creative presentation. There's a method to the madness. That IMLS grant that we were just looking at, it will have within it criteria for evaluation. Let's see. Somewhere in here. Preparing and submitting applications. You have to go through grants.gov, which is lovely. Application tips, preparing. Here are the components. Once again, they lay all this out for you. Your information. Somewhere there should be evaluation criteria. Or review criteria. For example, knowing by heart, the leadership one is all about, they have these criteria, sustainability, project management plan. They lay out what the reviewers are going to be told to look for. And guess what? It makes a perfect outline for your proposal. Just give them what they want. All right. Be sure to address the review criteria. What is it? Make sure that what you want to do is clear. In the first 2 paragraphs, you should be able to lay out the whole project. Don't write the ta-da at the end. Write it at the beginning. Be specific. On the first page, you should say, we want to do X, Y, or Z. And most agencies want impact. They don't want to know how many books you're going to process. They don't want to know how many kids are going to come through the program. They don't want to know how many things you're going to scan. What they want to know is what good is it going to do for your perceived audience, right? So it's how many, are kids going to learn to read? Are those scanned materials going to enrich history within your organization, within your community, right? See the difference? What's it going to be? What's the story they can tell to their boards, their sponsors, their funders? The importance of what you want to do is clear, significance of the project, and once again, phrased in the terms of the agency. Have you clearly described how you're going to do what you want to do? Right? Lots of ways to get to Los Angeles, but what is the best way to travel? Right? If you simply say what you want to do, we want to scan 500 documents. That's not good enough. Right? Particularly if you're going to have reviewers that know a lot about scanning documents. Oh, Artie, what equipment are you going to use? What's your workflow process? What's your storage systems, etc. Do you know what you're doing? Clearly describe any weakness or limitations of how you plan to address them and still achieve your objective. We've never done this before, but we're going to get Alice from the State Library to come down and teach us. And she's already agreed to do it. Here's her letter. Do you describe what success looks like? Have you answered the so what question? Once the project is completed, so what? What's in it for you? What's in it for your community? What's in it for the sponsor? And once again, format, format, format. A readable font, everything Aaron just talked about. Informative headers, lots of white space, illustrative materials, pictures, tables, and figures. Make the reviewer an advocate. And that's really interesting because what will happen is on an IMLS panel, lots of panels I've been on, you'll read a document before you show up at a table, and it'll be a group like this, and I'll read it. And someone will say, all right, we're going to look at this proposal. And if it gets a sort of, it was fine. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's okay. It's doomed. Because there's always more competing for fewer dollars. If it gets someone standing up and going, I really like this one. Even if it's, there's some real problems in here, but that idea is great. You want to give the evidence for someone, and so you need to make it easier for them to flip in and go, did you see on page 8? Did you see on page 13 when they? Plan ahead, give yourself adequate time, have lots of different types of folks read your application throughout. And in terms of your budget, is your financial expression, it's a financial expression of your work. What do you need, who do you need to check with? Are you going to go down to Best Buy and buy this stuff? Or do you have a better way of getting it? Do you have to go through a state contract? Do you have to go through a county contract? What's that process? If you have to go through a county process, to you that might be a pain in the ass. But you can write that up in your proposal saying, we have a process whereby we're sure of getting the best prices in audit and all this other stuff. So it can actually work as a benefit to that proposal. But ultimately persevere. Once again, if you're doing this blind, 20% acceptance rate is considered a really good acceptance rate. All right, questions, comments, things about that point. Then we can get down to actually doing something. Yeah?
What if you have a very fun, sexy people?
Okay.
I'm part of a museum, and we need to preserve media in legacy formats. That's where you go.
Well, let me...
Much line can you do?
No, that's a great question. And what I would ask you for is, why do you care? Why do you care about preserving that?
Well, as with any preservation, it's gone if we don't.
What's it? Let's try to be specific, just for fun.
Videotapes.
Okay, you have videotapes?
Yes.
All right. And you need to preserve them,
Right.
or else they go away.
Right.
So?
Cultural history. No, that's the big one.
Why is cultural? That's the big one.
Making it available for turning it into a way that other people can see it.
All right, so the reason, so what I'm trying to, you're not lying. You're not saying we're going to preserve videotapes because these are the only videotapes in the world, right? What we're trying to say is, there's a reason that you are taking the effort to write this proposal, right? If not, don't bother, right? That reason is what you're going to play up, not the format, right? So for example, if you really believe that this is important information because of format obsolescence or whatever it is, this is it. If you can't make a case to yourself, that's step number one. Now, I said, yes, you've got to twist this over, and if you think you're easy to persuade and they may not be, the question is, what's in it for them? Now, if you go to IMLS, IMLS actually has this rather interesting archival cultural heritage feel to it. They have some big collections, for example. NEH, National Endowment for the Humanities, cares a lot about cultural heritage, right? So you begin looking through. Now, something like the Gates Foundation. Gates Foundation for Libraries, which is all interested in public access computing and these kinds of things, they may not care at all. Don't go for it, right? So it's not that the need's boring, it's that you're trying to find the right match. And if you can't make that stretch, which you could, right? Public access computing, you've given them computers, now you need the content. That content, and some of it, very important, is preserved on videotape, therefore you should preserve the videotape, right? That's a line of logic.
Yeah.
You can try it, right? Versus NEH, which says, you already buy cultural heritage. Here's a good cultural heritage project. So that's looking for the right source. Okay. Other thoughts or comments or questions? Other people have done this. What did you learn when you went through this process?
I gave you a grant from the National Library of Medicine. I can tell you that the paperwork that they wanted was a 3-year grant was hundreds.
Yep.
So like at the beginning you said, are you sure you really want to do this? I don't know if I would ever do an online grant. I mean, it was a $25,000 grant. We probably spent $20,000 in
the paperwork, absolutely. Let's see, any National Library of Medicine is part of
NIH.
National Institutes for Health. NIH is the same institution that gives money to people doing cancer research and experimental drugs to people. So the problem there, sort of the inverse of the problem you have, which is you have all this bureaucracy set up about the work you've done. They have all this bureaucracy set up about the work they've done. The vast majority of what they've done is serious impact, ethical, health stuff. And so they're set up for talking about, I'm going to take 1,000 people, half of them I'm going to give them a drug I think is going to save their life, and the other half I'm going to give them a placebo, right? That's major stakes. And into that, so they built the system around that. And then I want to buy good community health, I don't know, what was the project?
It was Go Local. It was creating a database of local health information.
Right? So, which is a positive, but unfortunately their bureaucracy is set up for the other thing. And so the paperwork is set up as if you were doing, every resource you required was a patient getting an experimental drug. Yeah, and those are the things that when you're writing the grant, you, in your mind, are sitting there going, whatever. Like, I have one project I'm on now where I have to submit a monthly report, and I know that sounds really easy, but sometimes what I've done in that month is nothing, and I almost feel like guilty writing up. I mean, I didn't get, anyway. No, it's not an ethical, it was accounted for. But it's just like you write up a report that goes, nothing this month, and you're like, I don't want to do it. And so you're going to run into those, and that's the cultural shift that you're going to get into. The other cultural shift is, so let's say you get that NIH grant, and so it's bringing community resources local. You've done it, you move ahead, and then at some point, the director of the library gets up and says, that's not a priority for us anymore. Or, what's even better, you got that grant, you really love that grant, you wrote that grant, you got it, you're ready to work on it, and then the director goes, you can write grants. And so, I'm going to take your baby and hand it over here, and you're going to write this next grant, right? Always happens. Always happens. The minute you are successful writing grants, it's a very powerful, wonderful skill that can also be a curse. Other experiences, things that work or didn't work. Talk to the group today. All right. So I think we have a few minutes here. We can do one of two things. We can try this, working on the elevator speech one page, or I can keep talking about other experiences. Let's try it. So if you were to take your project, you've already been doing this. In essence, you're ready. You're going to present it tomorrow. So if you guys want to work on your group, give me a brief outline. Just let's take 10 minutes and come up with a brief outline. We'll just go around of what are your main selling points. Let's say that you wanted to go for that Spark IMLS grant. All right, so I'm going to put that criteria up again. Not for everything, but at least that basic description. And what I want you to think about is, in one page outline, how can you apply what you're doing to this Spark? All right? Should we do that together? If you want to do that, let's do it together. All right. All right, so give me a project. What's going on over here?
We're making an application for teens for this.
Okay, so it's an app.
It's an app, yeah.
And teens are going to use it
Targeted
to...
at a specific population that isn't using libraries.
All right, give me some details.
We identified the population because through our own observation and also through research, we knew that teens were leaving the library rapidly and not coming back, and so we had kids of their own. And we want to create lifelong library learners and lovers, and through this we can keep them connected and keep hearing from them and responding to their needs.
Okay, so let's look at this for a minute and say, all right, we're looking for opportunities to develop, to expand and test the boundaries of library services and practices. So what's innovative about that?
Libraries right in the palm of their hands or an app. Takes their smartphone, GPS location, and some rights to their local library.
Okay, so what I want you to notice about this is, what we probably care about is that the kids are going, we could go down the road of, so kids come back to libraries, or teens come back to libraries. If they're not getting anything out of it, why do we care if they come back? But so we're going to skip that for a moment, because what we're about to do is we're saying high risk and innovative. The high risk and innovative isn't trying to get teens back in libraries, it's the app, right? So we already know that when we're writing this together, we're going to play that up more than we're going to play even the teen angle. Does that make sense? All right, it provides small target. So what are you working on back there?
Transform You,
Okay.
which originally it's geared towards the Metro East as a portal for adults who have to reinvent their lives,
Okay.
such as starting their own business or going back to school.
Okay. So spin that for me in the innovative high-risk world.
That's what I've been sitting here trying to do.
Right. Wait, we want to try? Maybe.
Well, where I keep finding myself is more bringing it back to the Transform You idea as a marketing tool for libraries, and really the innovation of a new spin on libraries, transforming you, and what libraries have been, it's kind of, that's where I get stuck, is what we've been doing it for years, but it's a new way to market
Okay.
a library and their role within the community.
So what you get with just that brief discussion is you get two sides, right? Remember we talked about low risk, high yield, right? And that the innovation may be risky, but the team isn't, right? So what you're saying is the innovation is the method of marketing. And I assume it's using the net or something to do this.
Right.
But the low risk part is we have experience in working in the content area. We have a team that understands about this kind of outreach. And like you're talking about teens coming back in. You then have this wonderful narrative about teens who engage, learn more, and perform better. You're going to have a wonderful narrative about libraries are essential in communities for economic development, right? You have that in there. That's the low risk part. But, so you get to brag about what you're good at, but then you come around going, but if we could do this online in the East Metro area, if we can do this in a smartphone application, that's the innovative side. So it gives you the ability to brag about what you're good at, and then you got the spin. Yeah.
How much does it help to find a catchphrase to hang it on? For example, extend the electronic footprint of the library.
A lot. I mean, this is the tactics of it all. When you begin to know the agency, you're going to begin to know the people who come in. So if you go to the National Science Foundation, you know that these are going to be physicists and people looking at this. You sort of know the colleagues, and you know that these folks spinning phrases, they're going to be more interested in methodology. IMLS is going to be fellow librarians. And let's be honest about ourselves. We love catchphrases. I mean, if we can get, right, if we get a nice tagline, a title is important. I Lead You is a brilliant name for a project because you can remember it easily. It's got that sort of university feel. It's got lead in it, right?
Actually, it's not, because it's kind of a drag to get it a staff meeting and say, well, I lead you, as in, I know something you don't.
Well, no.
There's some baggage with it.
It may suck for you, but for applying, it was brilliant turn. Right? But that's what we're trying to hit. We're trying to hit the person with the purse. So, yes, I think it's very important. The other thing, and this is just, Aaron talks about design, and he says, there's a lot of unconscious design. A grant is a designed application. And it's like giving a presentation. If you're giving a presentation, you have 3 points to make. You only have 3 points to make. You might get a 4th one in there. You've all been to bad presentations where someone gives you the 500 points you've got to remember. I don't want to pick on an I Lead You experience, but do you remember when the guy came and talked about the CMSs and he told something about 12 steps or something, and then you didn't have a slide or a handout that actually told you what they were, and so after he got past 3, you sort of fuzzed out? This is a presentation. Think about if you were to get up and make a presentation, what would those 3 points be, right? So what do I keep saying? What's in it for them? Read the instructions, all these kinds of steps. So, same thing here. So, with your project, right, and you think about what you just told me in a really short way. You talked about the East Corridor.
Metro East.
Metro East. Which, once again, be careful. This is an inside baseball. As someone who doesn't come from Illinois, I assume that's of Chicago. Right? No. There we go. So what is Metro East?
It's east of St. Louis.
East of St. Louis, sorry. So once again, be careful of those kind of terminology. But you have we can go down the economic route, we can go down this portal route, we can go down the area route, but you don't want to just keep glomming. The other one that I've seen before, IMLS restricts you to 10 pages for a narrative. So once again, 3 points in 10 pages, really. And then I've gotten a proposal that was 10 pages and and I'm not making this up, 100 pages of appendices. All the reviewers got together and they said, They said, well, that might be a loophole, but we don't play that game, right? No one read 100 pages of appendices, so don't even pretend. So you have 1 page to get their attention, and 10 pages to supply them with the ammunition to sell your project. Right? Okay, another project.
I was to explore historical Illinois, journey through, and it's maps with historical data, pictures, history, connecting it to plat books,
Mhm.
the counties and townships.
So give me the innovation.
Innovation is taking the historical history with the maps, the plats, and connecting it with the community
Okay.
and connecting their history along with historical history, along with personal history,
Okay.
and combining it
Okay.
and collecting it and storing it on a
So-
website, on a web.
All right. And so let's be absolutely really clear right now. On a website doesn't count as innovative anymore. I just want to, so we all know that, right? Which reminds me, I always told my kid, if it ends in a la mode, it's French. If it ends in schnitzel, it's German. If it ends on a stick, it's American food. So if it ends with on a website, it's just disregard it, right?
Interactive website.
No, disregard it.
Okay.
No, to the point where it's background radiation. In other words, of course it's going to be on a website, right? So so let me just sort of work through that.
Okay.
What I heard, which was really cool, is we've got a couple of mashups together. We've got a couple of ideas. We've got history and current plugged together, right? We've got local information, and we've got community. We've got sort of the highbrow information, and we've got the community information, mashing that together. So what your innovation is, we're going to find an innovative intersection between historical, geographic information and the lives of our community members today.
Correct.
Right? That's a powerful argument. Right? That's the innovation. And allowing them to do it at a distance. Now apps, for example, that's still innovative. In 3 years, it'll be like on the web, right? But so there your idea is innovative. Here what you talked about was your method, your mode was innovative. And here what you talked about is the specific technology was innovative. And I know I'm putting you on the spot to think particularly around this one, but what we're trying to do is shape it. And this is where a little background research is useful. For example, IMLS has funded and is a huge fan of a fellow by the name of David Ramsey, who's this rich real estate developer from Southern California. And his whole thing is about maps. And you can go in and you can do historical evolutions of maps. And so by being able to see what they sort of thought was cool before, you can either avoid the hell out of it, or you can reference it if you think it's useful, right? Apps are the situation where you can go in and find out. And if you don't see IMLS supporting apps, you can certainly talk about how innovative libraries are now in app development, etc. You're going to talk about how economic development in this crisis is essential, and you've done it before. But being able to reach people where they are, their mode and method is really important. All right, another one? Please.
Well, I was thinking about what John was talking about earlier, and I just took a flyer at some catchphrases. Something like, but insert name of community here, Niles. These were just one time with Niles, although we're in a team together.
Yep.
Who we were, preserving the story of past generations, or who we were, digitizing images and text from the Niles of the past.
All right, the other thing to think about is the impact, which is, and now give me that last phrase, which is for
future research.
Okay.
Future generations.
Well, those are two different things. All right, and the reason I'm picking on it, but future generations is nebulous. It means we'll find a reason for it later. I know that's not what you mean. Future research means we know this kind of research is coming up. So let me give you as an example. One of the things that's getting really interesting is that National Science Foundation is extraordinarily interested in, the Mellon Foundation, is the notion of e-research, of working digitally online. And in the NEH, National Endowment for the Humanities, is very interested in digital humanities, which is doing humanistic research, doing history research, doing cultural research, using electronic resources and text. And the idea being that we used to think that, you run an electron through an accelerator and you get terabytes of data out of it. Physicists care about large bits of text. Well, the National Library of Jerusalem, National Library of Israel in Jerusalem, just put up the Dead Sea Scrolls. Did you see this? That's with Google. And so now you can see all the Dead Sea Scrolls and zoom right in and out of them. I was just talking with them, and they got something like 10 million hits on it the first day. They said if Google wasn't doing this, they would have crashed their servers left, right. My point of this is humanities scholars, historians, are increasingly having to work with digital information. And if that digital information isn't there, I mean, you can talk about the tools, but the actual data is not there, then they can't do their work. So if you can spin it around that, which is we're providing this digital, vital, important information now in a digital form to feed into this trending, cool, innovative thing called e-research, that becomes a tag.
Is that e-research, lower E, capital R?
I think it's usually,
That you-
it's the 50 different ways of doing it that way, or e-research.
But I mean, where that pops up.
It's all over the National Science Foundation. It's data sciences is another way of looking at it, but that's a different debate. It's huge in Europe. So anyway, see what we're doing? We're doing the spin, but we're turning it around to say, for them, what does IMLS get out of this? With any of these projects, what does IMLS get out of this? What does IMLS get out of any of these projects we're just talking about?
Because we already know
Well,
so
okay, but let's keep that on the list. Recognition.
Potential pilot program.
Potential pilot programs.
They improve library services nationwide, is one of their goals.
Right, which is if we can, and that's important, because if we go back to IMLS's mission, their mission is to improve libraries. And so capturing videotapes or capturing historical information that helps Niles, that helps Des Plaines, that's not going to do it, right? That's the other thing we have to go into criteria, which is what's national impact, right?
What I really wish I had is to grab a hold of something that's as compelling for the research in the professional community as, for example, genealogy is for people at large.
That's a line.
You say genealogy and they're all over it. Everybody wants to know who great-great-grandfather was. But you say how Niles was in 1910, and that's a little more abstract.
But that line you just said is we want to make it as compelling for our public to do historical research on the community as it is to do genealogy for their own family tree. That's something that you can then expand and people will get. And if we can do it in Niles, if we can do it in Des Plaines, if we can do it in Chicago, they can do it anywhere. Right? That's the other part of it. If we can get this app and teams work in our area, we're going to provide open source, we're going to provide workshops, we're going to do something that you can do it in any community. If we, lots of libraries are wrestling with economic development and outreach. But if we can do it here, we can then teach other communities this new method of marketing. If we look at maps and geographic information, I mean, you want to hit trendy. Geolocation, geo-information, throw geo whatever you want at it. It turns into something that's interesting that you can say, imagine other communities using their maps as a mashup of local, right? So that's an IMLS one. If you were going to say a community foundation, every community, I mean, frighteningly poor communities almost all have a community foundation. You probably already have gone to them. They've sponsored the summer youth program. They've sponsored, right? Some? Yes? Anyone? Okay. So you can go back. A lot of them are worried about economic development right now. Some are very much worried about cultural heritage and historical foundation. And by the way, when you talk about that, there's a nice strong partnership that you might want to look at as well.
Okay.
The local historical agency and the library working together, if they're not one and the same already, just as a way of bringing those partners in. I know, like they talk to you, but but it is.
It's been tough. We have a 15-year war with our history center for one person there and one person here, and they pulled
Yeah, it's.
Well, we have the opposite problem, but actually, I'll steal your thunder. You're going to say, oh, what an opportunity. You're right. I get a grant for it.
Yeah.
Well, now the problem has been things have thought between the institutions and the historical society is actually very receptive to the library. If they had their way, they would come in with bushel baskets of dusty photos, and we would, as pro bono, be scanning, digitizing, and archiving for the rest of our lives.
Right.
But I do hear a grant in there.
Well, and what I find personally useful, grants are one way, and once again, this is somewhat of an academic setting. it's one way to make these nebulous partnerships real. Right? You go to a meeting, everyone feels happy, there's a kumbaya moment where they say, we need to work closer together. We need to align our strategic relationship. We'll forge a new history of whatever. And then you walk away and nothing happens. And then you have a meeting in a month to see how that historical synergy of relationships going, at which point you walk out going, oh, this is great that we're talking, and then you walk away. If you then turn into, you know, it is great. Let's write a grant. One, if the grant comes in, that's great. You now are working together. If not, it's put you through a process that's really forced you to detail what that relationship and what your objectives are. So what I found, one of the things, we talk about multiple reasons to write grants, solidifying these partnerships, even if you don't get the grants, are a huge one. State libraries, right? Let's face it, some people would not be talking to state libraries if there wasn't a check involved on the other side of it. It gives you a great opportunity to sit there and begin to shape what your community wants. When that LSTA money comes in and sitting there in this nice little basket, you have a lot of discretion about what you can do with it, right? Because I remember in the virtual reference days, LSTA money in many states was going to build virtual reference cooperatives and networks. And then when it was digitization the day before, it was going into digitizing and keeping critical collections. Well, this is a chance that state libraries go to their locals and say, what are we doing, what are we doing? When we get this block grant, what's the technology can help? Is it an iLead U-like initiative? Is it a historical initiative? Is it an ACT initiative, et cetera? But when you put money on the table and labor next to the money, it makes relationships real very quickly. And you find out, well, gee, they're not calling me back about this. Maybe this relationship isn't going to happen, or is going to happen. All right. Last point that I want to make, and then I think we're over time. Over time. If you get the grant, you're not done. First of all, when you write the grant, the major section you need to think about is, and this is in the minds of any granting agency, when my money dries up, what happens next? Because back to your reputation, IMLS is very interested in their reputation. They're not interested in their reputation to other libraries. That's important. They're interested in their reputation to Congress. When you go and look up any grant competition that IMLS has, they break down the recipients of the grants by state. Why do they do that? Because they then also go to the state senators and say, this is what we did for your state. And we had Chuck Schumer's, one of our senators in New York, and IMLS got a grant, and we got a call from Schumer's office at the school going, you got this grant, tell me what it is so the senator can get up and do an announcement about it. Right? IMLS is interested in their continued reputation. MacArthur, somewhat interested, because frankly, they got plenty of money, right? But the presidents get really interested of how are you going to think of MacArthur? How are you going to get that reputation of MacArthur? Communities are interested in that. So reputation, never take it off the table. But they all are very interested in, like, give me this money, you do it. What happens the day after my check runs out? Because that's also their reputation, right? What happens is that site that Aaron put up gets absorbed by the National Historical Association and disappears. I mean, there wasn't a little bit of spite when he told that story at the end. Right? Or it happens that it then turns into a porn site because someone bought the domain. I mean, they do care over time. So you have to talk about sustainability. Either you structure the grant as 1 year and out, or you structure the grant as 1 year and absorbed, meaning we're then going to take on and do this in our base funding. Or you talk about public-private partnerships. One of the things that's going on in Onondaga County, where I'm from, is the the Syracuse Historical Society doesn't take any federal money. One, because the director doesn't believe in it, and two, the director knows damn well that they're the first to get cut when anything gets back, that it's not available. So what he did is he worked out a deal, a brilliant deal between the local library, regional bank, and the local playhouse, cultural institution. And the way it works is, I don't know if I told you this one, whenever they're putting on a play, was the one I just saw in there, I hate Hamlet. Anyway, kind of hate Hamlet. The National Historical Society finds some link to local. I mean, and sometimes they're stretching, but they find some link to local. And then what they do is they put together an exhibit. That exhibit gets installed in the waiting area of the Playhouse and sponsored by the local regional bank. So this exhibit brought to you by. When the play closes, they take the exhibit and they make it a moving exhibit from library to library to library. So what they've done, and it keeps the regional, brought to you by the regional bank. So the regional bank gets out of it publicity, reputation, etc. The Historical Society gets the money. The Playhouse gets something to distract the people as they're waiting for 3 hours before they get into the Playhouse. And the library gets out of it some new information going around, and once again, building this relationship. So is that going to be the transition? In other words, you guys built this app. End of the grant. Do you sell it? There's nothing to say that you can't say, we're going to write this app, and it's going to be 99 cents. And that money is going to then help support it, because 99 cents is a low threshold, and blah, blah, blah. People are used to paying for it. There you go. Are you going to open source it? The maps, when you guys are done, that's going to take, where are the servers going? When it's done, does it just go away? Or you say, we have the servers. It's going to stay on the servers, we're going to maintain it. And here's a letter from my director saying we commit to keep this up for at least 10 years. Right? When you get that East Metro Corridor going, is this a relationship with the Economic Development Agency of the city, the region, the state, perhaps? Right? That's where partnerships come in. And libraries, you guys are usually one thing that we talk about libraries is we've been around a long time. We're bureaucratic organizations, and that's where we're slow, blah, blah. But what that means is for other people writing their grants, assuming it's not a basket full of unaccepted resources that you do pro bono, they're perfectly willing to say, if you work with a library, we're going to be here. Right? You know, we've been here for a long time, we're going to be here. We're a trusted repository over time. Write in for us a little bit of line so we can catalog it, what have you. In other words, we're not going to do it for free. But write us in for some money, some resources. When you get that grant and you've made that discussion, if you want to keep down this road, you use that grant to get the next grant. You use that to build your reputation. What you're doing is you're taking the network of people you connected in writing the grant, and you take the funding agency. And IMLS for iLeadU is our biggest proponent, because as iLeadU is successful, they look more successful. So they're going to the different states and saying, have you thought about iLeadU, right? They're actually helping sell the next round of this. And so you want to say, well, who else can I talk to about this? Where else can I go? And you build that connection and build that connection. Right? And so you begin building on success for the next one. The State Library of Illinois now has a reputation of being a good grant writer. Right? And that's because if we can show success here, we can then show success in another one, show success in another one. So don't think that you're done. Part of, if you never write into a grant, you write dissemination into a grant. But really what that means is marketing yourself. What community is going to help fund your sponsors? What conferences do you need to go to get the next round? If you got local funding, you should write not to present at local conferences, you should write at regional, national, or state, because that's going to be the next level of funding that you're going to see. Right? So the idea is constantly self-promote, constantly market yourself. You get a grant, the day after the announcement goes up, your press release goes out. The second day, the day the check gets in, the website goes up, if you want to wait that long, that has the grant application on it and what the major parts of it are. And throughout, even if you're not required to do a monthly report, you're putting up a weekly, a monthly, a blog, something to constantly show new activity and new work going on. If you have to fill out all that god-awful paperwork, and I've been there, is there something we can pull out of there that we can use to update the community? It's a marketing effort. Really what it comes down to is if you want to get in the grant game, the first one starts your reputation and helps you get the next one, and then you get 2, and then you get 3, and then you become known as the successful person to go back to.
One more. Target researchers. A tagline for them. Researchers who will explain our present to their future.
I like that one a lot. And then, so if you're going to go with that, what I'm going to be expecting on the other side is, I'm going to be expecting lots of names of researchers who are part of your project. Right? Because what you've done is you've set up that the crucial part is researchers doing something. So where are the researchers here? So that's what you got to worry about. But it clicks, right? That line tells you where you need to put the priority, which you can do. All right, I'm sorry I talked to you for a long time. And I'm always available that if you guys do start down this road, you want reviews, you want thoughts, you want feedback, let me know. I'd be glad to provide it. All right, break, next one. Yeah.
My program didn't have a grant writing class. I wish they had.
They can stay theirs.
Yeah.
Sabrina.
Yeah.
I don't know, what do
I think you're absolutely right. You get that nice link to them that's
Actually, I'm gonna Google Analytics, I think that's where we're going for, let's say.
There you go. It is all marketing, it's all marketing. You're absolutely right. We're all in sales.
She's been like, Jones and Julia, saying for about a year now. So if I didn't show up and actually, I don't know.
So you're gonna rock it.
Right, and it's like, will you give us $25,000? We have one forever. I'm sure. Yeah, that's where. When it's just like, I paid, I get to You're doing technology? Yeah. Where was everybody else coming? I didn't. I think if I just. Yeah. And we're using, it's not right there. I hate to say that I don't have a presentation because I don't like giving presentations. Well, I'm just gonna go and see if there's any, because I just feel like we're just very librarian. Other than the beginning and the end, then it just goes to the same.
Well, I think it has to know part of it. It has to be information, and you have to be getting.
Yeah, I want to just go see if I get some tips and go to the team. Just don't tell me. You're gonna say yes, you can ask her, because she is the one running the start screen. The only thing, have you started that?
Yeah.
The only thing, is February 1st.
Yeah.
The only thing I did write down in there, which I hadn't thought about, is, and he mentioned, working in the grant conferences that you would go to, the cost for those to present, the transform you.
I think that's hard. That's something you can now ask for. But I got the paperwork with us.
Oh, look at it. Okay. So that's what, because that's why I said I'm struggling with. I'd love to, I don't know what we would ask for.
Well, obviously we've got jump drives to put all of our stuff on, and open the jump drive to have it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, so I have like 100 junk drives. Yeah, that's where I'm really struggling as well. I don't know what would be, I think it's great, you know, it should go, but I don't know what is actually really out there.
Like we did.
Yeah.
Our mind's always gone.